The first sound was so faint that I blamed the house. Old houses complain. They settle when the afternoon warms the roof. Pipes tick behind plaster. Floorboards flex after a person crosses them, as if remembering the weight. My daughter's house on South Victor Avenue had been built in 1948, and I had spent enough weekends inside its walls to know most of its ordinary noises. This one was not ordinary. Scrape. Pause. Scrape. I stood in the doorway of Claire's bedroom with my phone in one hand and the spare key in the other. The bed was neatly made. Her reading glasses lay folded on the nightstand beside a glass holding 5-day-old water. The curtains were open, but the room still felt closed, too still for a Saturday morning in June. "Claire?" I called. Nothing answered. Then came 3 small scratches beneath the bed. I was 72 years old, a widower, and 4 years retired from the company I had built. I had heard machines fail in warehouses, employees shout when a loading ramp collapsed, and a doctor tell me my wife would not survive the winter. None of those sounds frightened me as much as those 3 weak scratches. I crossed the room and dropped to one knee. Pain shot through the joint, but I barely noticed. The space under the bed was dark except for a pair of storage boxes and one of Claire's slippers. I turned on the flashlight on my phone. "Claire, if you can hear me, make that sound again." For several seconds there was silence. Scrape. It did not come from beneath the furniture. It came from beneath the floor. I dialed 911 before I moved anything. The dispatcher asked whether I could see the person in distress. I told her no. She asked whether there was a basement. I told her there was a storm shelter under the rear half of the house, an old concrete room that the previous owner had added after the tornado outbreak of 1974. The original entrance had been outside, but when Claire and Grant renovated the house 9 years earlier, they installed an interior access hatch beneath the master bedroom floor. "Where is that hatch now?" the dispatcher asked. "Under the bed." I set the phone on speaker. The bed was a heavy walnut platform frame that I had helped Grant assemble. I pulled one corner. It shifted less than an inch. I tried again, bracing my good leg against the wall, and felt something tear in my shoulder. "Sir, emergency services are on the way," the dispatcher said. "Do not injure yourself. My daughter has been missing for 5 days. The words sounded different when I said them aloud in that room. Missing. Until then I had told myself she was unreachable, upset, busy, taking space. Those were the phrases Grant had used. Missing was the word my body had known since Wednesday. I pulled the mattress sideways. It slid halfway off the frame and struck the floor. With the weight shifted, I could lift one end of the platform and drag it toward the window. The rug beneath it bunched into a ridge. The square steel hatch appeared under the rug. I had last seen it during the renovation. Claire had insisted the access remain functional. Grant had joked that no tornado would bother crossing town to find their particular house. The contractor installed a recessed ring handle and an interior safety release. We tested it twice. Now 2 new steel brackets crossed the seam. A brass padlock held them together. That lock had not been there 9 years ago. I put my face close to the floor. "Claire?" Something struck the underside of the hatch. "Dad." The voice was barely more than air. Every question in my head disappeared except one. "Are you hurt?" "Water's gone." A breath. "Ankle. Please. Help is coming. I'm right here." I told the dispatcher there was a locked hatch and a conscious woman beneath it. She instructed me not to leave the room. I did anyway, long enough to unlock the front door for the firefighters. They arrived with police and paramedics in less than 7 minutes. It felt like an hour. A firefighter cut the padlock, but the hatch would not lift. One of the brackets had been screwed through the floor into the frame below. He used a pry bar while another man kept speaking to Claire through the seam. When the metal finally rose, air came out of the shelter carrying the smell of concrete, sweat, and stale dust. Claire lay at the bottom of the narrow stairs. She wore gray trousers and the pale green blouse she had worn to work on Monday. One sleeve was torn. Her dark hair was stuck to her face. Her right ankle was swollen twice its normal size, and her lips were split from dehydration. Beside her lay an empty emergency water container and a short metal shelf bracket with bright scratches along one edge. That was what she had used to reach the underside of the hatch. One paramedic climbed down. Another asked me to step back. I did, although every part of me wanted to go into that hole and carry her out as I had carried her from the back seat of our car when she was 6 and had fallen asleep on a long drive. She opened her eyes when they lifted her onto the bedroom floor. "Dad, I'm here." Her fingers closed around my wrist with surprising force. "Grant took my phone." The police officer nearest us stopped writing. Claire looked at him, then at me. He locked me in. 5 days earlier, on Monday evening, Claire had called me at 7:12. I remembered the exact time because I had been watching the second inning of a baseball game and had muted the television when her name appeared. She called most evenings. It was not an obligation. It was a habit formed during Evelyn's illness, when our family learned that one ordinary voice could steady a difficult day. After my wife died, Claire kept calling. Sometimes we spoke for 20 minutes. Sometimes she simply asked whether I had eaten something that did not come from a freezer. That Monday, she sounded distracted. "Did you ever sign a waiver involving the Riverside warehouse?" she asked. Pierce Mobility Solutions owned 3 buildings in Tulsa. The Riverside warehouse was the largest, a 1-story brick structure on 12 acres near the river. I had bought the property in 1998 when the neighborhood consisted mostly of storage yards and a tire repair shop. The land had become valuable as the city expanded trails and mixed-use development nearby. "No," I said. "What kind of waiver?" "Founder consent. Grant says you signed one during the transition." "I signed a voting proxy for 90 days after my surgery. Nothing permanent." She went quiet. "Claire? I found a document in the land file. I want Anita to look at it before I say more." Anita Cole was the company's general counsel. She had worked with us for 11 years and had the useful habit of refusing to guess when a document could answer. "Is Grant there?" I asked. I heard a door close on Claire's end. "He just came home." "Do you want me to come over?" "No. I'm probably making this bigger than it is." Those were the last words I heard in my daughter's real voice for 5 days. On Tuesday morning, my call went directly to voicemail. I sent a message asking about the waiver. "At noon," she replied. "Busy. Meeting all day. Will call tonight." Claire used punctuation in text messages. She also never wrote "will call" without adding a time. Small things, perhaps. Parents are told not to make too much of small things once their children become adults. We are expected to respect privacy, independence, marriage, work, and the 1,000 boundaries that protect grown lives from parental interference. So I waited. Tuesday night passed without a call. On Wednesday, Grant answered when I called Claire's number. "She left her phone at home," he said. "Where is she?" "At a planning retreat." "Where?" "Dad. She is 43. She doesn't need to report her location." Grant had called me Dad since the year he married Claire. That morning the word sounded less like affection than a tool he had picked up because it made correction seem gentle. "She asked me about the Riverside warehouse on Monday," I said. There was a pause. "That is exactly why she needed a break. She has been fixating on routine documents and accusing people of hiding things. She didn't accuse anyone. Not to you." He lowered his voice. "Claire hasn't been sleeping. She became agitated at the office. Vanessa and I convinced her to spend a few days at Red Cedar Wellness Center." Vanessa Nolan was Grant's older sister and our director of human resources. I had hired her 6 years earlier because she had experience managing benefits for a hospital group. At the time, Claire worried that employing both siblings might blur the line between family and supervision. I told her good policies would keep the line clear. It is uncomfortable to remember how confident I was. "Let me speak to her," I said. "Phones are restricted during the program." "Give me the number." She asked for privacy. An hour later, a message came from Claire's phone. "I need space. Please do not come to the house or call the center. I will contact you when I am ready." I read it 6 times. The message did not sound like my daughter. But there are situations in which a father can make things worse by insisting he knows his child better than she knows herself. Grief had made me protective after Evelyn's death. Claire had once told me, kindly, that concern became pressure when it refused to accept an answer. I did not want to be that father. I replied with one sentence. "I love you. I am here when you want me." On Thursday, I called Red Cedar Wellness Center. The receptionist said she could neither confirm nor deny whether a person was receiving services. That sounded legitimate. I asked whether the center collected phones from all participants. She said program rules varied. "Could you take a message?" "Only if you have the participant identification code." Grant said he did not have it. By Friday morning, concern had become something physical. I drove to the office even though Claire had been trying for 4 years to teach me that retirement did not mean arriving unannounced. The receptionist looked startled to see me. Grant's assistant said he was out of town at a development conference. Vanessa met me near the elevator and closed the conference room door behind us. "Walter, you cannot appear here demanding private health information," she said. I asked whether my daughter was safe. "She is safe. Have you spoken to her?" Vanessa's eyes moved toward the glass wall before returning to mine. "Grant has." That was not my question. She folded her hands. "Claire experienced an acute stress event Monday night. Grant arranged a voluntary placement. The board has been informed that she is on short medical leave. Who signed the leave request? Claire did. Show me. You are no longer an officer. That was true. I remained a director and owned 32% of the voting shares, but I had stepped down as chief executive when Claire took the position. I had done so because succession is not real if the founder continues to enter every room as the final authority. Then call Anita, I said. She is reviewing the process. I later learned that was not true. Vanessa walked me to the lobby. As the elevator doors closed, she said, Grant asked me to tell you not to interfere. Claire will be home Monday. The word Monday stayed with me. Not soon. Not after treatment. Monday. That evening, I drove past Claire's house. Her car was in the garage. Grant's black SUV was gone. The porch light was off, and a package rested beside the front door. Claire would never leave a delivery outside overnight if she was home. I did not use my key. I sat across the street for 10 minutes, ashamed of being there and more ashamed of considering leaving. Then a neighbor came out to water a hanging plant. Her name was Mrs. Kaplan. She had known Claire since the renovation. Walter? She called. Is everything all right? Claire is away for a few days. Mrs. Kaplan frowned. Then who was moving furniture Wednesday night? I got out of the car. What furniture? I don't know. There was dragging upstairs. Around midnight, maybe. Grant's car was here. Did you see Claire leave? No. But I don't watch the house. She glanced toward it. Their dog has been with me since Tuesday. Grant said the retreat did not allow animals. Pepper was an 8-year-old terrier mix that followed Claire from room to room. Claire would leave her husband before she left that dog, without giving Mrs. Kaplan written instructions and 3 bags of food. May I see him? I asked. The dog ran toward me inside Mrs. Kaplan's entryway, whining before I touched him. His food and medication were packed in a plastic grocery bag. No leash, no note, no emergency contact. That night I called the police non-emergency number. I explained that my adult daughter had stopped communicating, that her husband said she had voluntarily entered a wellness center, and that messages from her phone did not sound like her. The officer asked whether there was evidence of a crime, a threat, domestic violence, or self-harm. I had none. He said I could request a welfare check at the residence, but if no one answered and there were no signs of immediate danger, officers might not have grounds to enter. I requested it. 2 officers knocked at 9:40. No one answered. They looked through the accessible windows, checked the doors, and called Grant. He told them Claire was in a private treatment program and that I was struggling to respect her request for distance. He sent them a screenshot of the message from her phone. One officer spoke to me afterward. Mr. Pierce, if you have reason to believe the placement is involuntary, contact the facility or an attorney. Right now we have an adult communicating that she wants privacy. You have a screenshot. I understand your concern. He did understand it. Understanding was not the same as authority. I did not sleep. At 5:30 Saturday morning, I called Anita Cole at home. She answered on the 4th ring. Walter? Did Claire sign medical leave papers? What medical leave papers? The fear I had been negotiating with for 4 days stopped negotiating. Anita told me she had received an email late Thursday saying Claire would be unavailable until further notice and that Grant would exercise temporary executive authority under the continuity plan. Attached was a physician's letter describing exhaustion, disorientation, and impaired judgment. Did you verify the doctor? I asked. I requested authorization to speak with her. Grant said the provider would respond Monday. Why Monday? There is an emergency board meeting Monday morning. About what? The Riverside offer. I was in my car before we ended the call. The spare key Claire had given me was attached to a brass tag Evelyn bought at a craft fair. Family is always welcome, it said. I had carried that key for 9 years and used it twice, both times to water plants. At 6:18 Saturday morning, I unlocked my daughter's front door. The house smelled faintly of bleach. There were no overturned chairs, no broken glass, no visible signs of a struggle. The kitchen counters had been wiped clean. A mug sat upside down in the drying rack. Claire's handbag was missing, but her running shoes were by the back door and her medication remained in the cabinet. I called her name in every room. On the 2nd floor, I noticed fresh scratches on the hardwood outside the bedroom. The platform bed had been moved. The rug lay several inches out of alignment. Then I heard the house make a sound it had never made before. Scrape. Pause. Scrape. At the hospital, a nurse took my blood pressure twice and suggested I sit down. Claire was treated for severe dehydration, a fractured ankle, a scalp wound, and the effects of a sedative that remained in her system longer than the emergency physician expected. She had pressure injuries on one shoulder from lying on concrete. The doctor said another day without water could have caused organ damage. Detective Lena Ortiz arrived before noon. She was a compact woman in her late 30s with a calm voice and a notebook small enough to disappear in her hand. She spoke to Claire alone first, then asked if my daughter wanted me present. Claire did. The hospital room was bright, almost aggressively clean. Sunlight crossed the blanket. Machines measured ordinary signs of life with soft electronic tones. Claire kept one hand wrapped around a cup of ice. "Start with Monday," Detective Ortiz said. Claire looked at me before answering. "I found a transfer from our operating reserve, $386,000. I felt the number more than I understood it. Transferred where? Nolan Strategic Advisory, Grant's company. He had created it 3 years earlier for occasional consulting outside Pierce Mobility. Claire and I objected to the potential conflict, so Grant agreed in writing that the company would not accept work from our vendors, buyers, or customers." "What was the transfer described as?" Ortiz asked. "Transaction preparation and workforce analysis." "Who authorized it?" "The record showed my approval and Grant's. I never approved it." Claire had found the transfer during a monthly cash review. When she opened the supporting folder, she saw an invoice, a consulting agreement, and a board consent bearing her electronic signature. The board consent referred to a potential sale of the Riverside warehouse. "Grant had been encouraging us to sell," she said. "I opposed it because the buyer wanted vacant possession. 61 employees work there. We would have 12 months to leave." "What was the offer?" I asked. $9.4 million. The land was valuable, but not more valuable than the company using it. Pierce Mobility built wheelchair ramps, installed residential lifts, and distributed home care equipment across eastern Oklahoma. We were not a glamorous business. We measured doorways, answered frightened families on weekends, and sent technicians into houses where one step had suddenly become a wall. The Riverside warehouse held fabrication equipment, training rooms, and our central inventory. Selling it might produce an impressive number on a report. Vacating it could damage everything that produced the number. Claire printed the documents and brought them home Monday night. She called me, then called Anita. Before Anita answered, Grant arrived. "He said the transfer was an advance fee authorized by the executive committee," Claire continued. "There is no executive committee." Grant accused her of checking his work because she did not trust him. Claire said trust was not a substitute for approval. The argument moved from the kitchen into the study. "He made tea," she said. "That sounds absurd now." "It does not sound absurd," Ortiz replied. "What happened after you drank it?" "I became dizzy. I remember trying to stand. He took my phone. After that, pieces." She remembered Vanessa arriving. She remembered Grant saying they needed time until Monday. She remembered being carried or dragged up the stairs. When she woke, she was in the storm shelter. The interior safety handle had been removed. There were 2 emergency water jugs in the shelter. One was empty. The other had enough to keep her alive for several days if she rationed it. There were no working lights. Someone had taken the emergency radio and food bin. "Did he speak to you after placing you there?" Ortiz asked. Claire nodded. "Tuesday morning. He opened the hatch a few inches. He said I was having a breakdown and that he was protecting me from destroying the company. He wanted the password to my digital signing key." "Did you give it to him?" "No." "What did he do?" "Close the hatch." My hands had closed into fists. I forced them open. "Did he return?" "Wednesday night," he asked again. "He said Dad had already waived his rights and the board would approve the sale Monday. He told me if I cooperated, he would take me to a private hospital and tell everyone I had checked myself in." "And if you did not cooperate?" Claire stared at the ice melting in her cup. "He said people believe records more than frightened women." Detective Ortiz let the silence remain for several seconds. "Where is Grant now?" she asked. "He said he was flying to Dallas Friday for the buyers' conference." Ortiz stepped into the hall to make a call. Claire looked at me. "You came." There are answers a parent wishes he could give. I knew immediately. I never doubted. I understood every sign. None was true. "I waited too long," I said. "You came." I believed the messages. For a while. I should have used the key Tuesday. "You respected what you thought was my choice." Her voice broke. "He knew you would." That was the first shape of Grant's plan I fully understood. He had not simply stolen Claire's phone. He had used our respect for her independence as a lock outside the lock. Detective Ortiz returned. Officers had located Grant at a hotel near Dallas Love Field. Tulsa police were coordinating with local authorities. "What about Vanessa?" Claire asked. "We are locating her." My children are with Grant's mother at Grand Lake. We have that address. Claire grabbed my wrist again. Do not let him tell Maya and Eli I abandoned them. I won't. The promise came easily. Keeping it would require more care than I yet understood. Grant was arrested in the hotel lobby at 2:26 that afternoon. Detective Ortiz did not tell us the details until later. He had been standing beside a display board showing a proposed riverfront residential development when two Dallas officers approached him. In his briefcase, they found a purchase agreement for the Riverside property, an unsigned resignation letter in Claire's name, and a presentation identifying him as the incoming regional director for Hawthorne Development. His attorney would later argue that possession of business documents proved nothing. That was correct. A contract in a briefcase is not evidence that a man locked his wife under a floor. The drill receipt in the same briefcase was harder to explain. It was dated Tuesday at 6:41 a.m. and listed 2 steel brackets, structural screws, a brass padlock, and a battery-powered work light. The work light was found in Grant's SUV. The other items were attached to Claire's bedroom floor. At 4 o'clock, Detective Ortiz and a victim advocate drove to Grand Lake with a county deputy to collect Maya and Eli. Claire wanted to go, but she could not stand without assistance. She called her mother-in-law, Diane Nolan, from the hospital. Diane answered with anger already in her voice. Claire, what in heaven's name is happening? Police are here. Grant has been arrested. I know. They say you were in the house. Grant told us you were at Red Cedar. Claire closed her eyes. I was locked in the storm shelter. The line went silent. Locked? Diane whispered. Grant put me there Monday night. No. It was not a denial supported by facts. It was a mother's body refusing a sentence before her mind could examine it. The children need to come home, Claire said. They heard the officers. Maya is crying. What am I supposed to tell them? Tell them I love them and that I did not leave them. Diane's voice hardened again, but differently. Grant said you asked him to take the children away because you were afraid of yourself. Claire began to shake. I took the phone. Diane, this is Walter. Put the children's things together. The advocate will explain the transfer. Do not question them about their father, and do not repeat anything Grant told you about Claire. You cannot order me. No. But the deputy can enforce the emergency protective order Detective Ortiz is carrying. I had learned of the order 10 minutes earlier. Repeating it made me sound calmer than I felt. Diane started to cry. Walter, I swear I did not know. Then help us by not pretending you know what happened now. The children arrived after 8 that night. Maya entered the hospital room first. She was 15, tall for her age, with Claire's dark eyes and Grant's habit of pressing her lips together when she was frightened. Eli followed with his backpack held against his chest. They stopped when they saw their mother's bruises and the boot around her ankle. Claire opened her arms. Eli ran to her. Maya did not. Dad said you didn't want to see us, she said. Claire's face changed in a way I had not seen even when she described the shelter. That was not true. He showed me your text. He had my phone. Why would he do that? There was no answer suitable for a 15-year-old, and every incomplete answer sounded like evasion. The victim advocate, a woman named Rebecca, stepped forward. Maya, your mother was prevented from contacting anyone. The police are investigating. You do not have to decide tonight what you believe about everything. Maya looked at me. Did Grandpa find you? Claire nodded. Under the bed? Eli asked. The adults in the room exchanged glances. Someone at Diane's house had said too much. There is a storm shelter under the floor, Claire explained. I was trapped there, and Grandpa heard me. Eli began to cry against her shoulder. Maya moved closer to the bed but did not hug her mother. I wanted to tell her she should. I wanted to remove uncertainty from that room as if it were a dangerous object. Instead, I pulled a chair beside her. You can sit here, I said. She did. For 20 minutes we spoke about practical things. Where the children would sleep. Who would collect clothes from the house after police released it. Whether Pepper could stay at my place. Claire answered until exhaustion pulled her words apart. When a nurse asked us to leave, Maya kissed her mother's forehead. It was small, tentative, and more honest than the dramatic embrace I had imagined. The children came home with me. My house had been designed for 2 adults and occasional guests, not 2 frightened children, a nervous terrier, and a grandfather who checked the locks 3 times. Maya slept in Evelyn's sewing room. Eli took the guest room. I lay awake on the sofa because every time I closed my eyes I saw a square of black concrete beneath a bedroom floor. At 1:13 in the morning, Maya appeared in the hallway. Did Dad try to kill Mom? The bluntness of the question made me sit up. I don't know what he intended. She could have died. Yes. Then why don't you know? Because what could have happened and what a person intended are not always the same legal question. The police will investigate both. That sounds like something a lawyer says. It is something an adult says when the truth is terrible enough without adding guesses. She stood with her arms crossed. Are you going to send us to Grandma Diane? Not tonight. Ever? Your mother and the court will decide. Diane says she did not know what your father had done. Do you believe her? I believe we need more facts. Maya looked disappointed. Children often think wisdom means certainty. At 72, I had learned it mostly means knowing which uncertainty cannot be forced. Your dad is still your dad, I said. Nothing I tell you will require you to stop loving him. Nothing you feel for him will make what happened to your mother acceptable. She sat on the other end of the sofa. He told me Mom was sick. He said she had been confused for months. Did you notice that? She was tired. They argued. About what? The office. Money. Dad said Grandpa was turning her against him. Did he say that to you? Once. I closed my eyes for a moment. Grant had converted a business disagreement into a family loyalty test, then placed that test in his daughter's hands. I am sorry he said that. Were you? Was I what? Turning Mom against him? No. Would you tell me if you were? Probably not in those words. She almost smiled. Here is what I can tell you. Your mother called me Monday about a document. I answered one question. I did not tell her to confront your father or leave him. I did not know they were fighting about money. Dad said the company belonged to him as much as it belonged to Mom. Your father owns shares. He has authority as chief operating officer. But marriage does not make every piece of property equal, and a title does not make company money personal money. Did he steal it? There is a transfer no one can yet explain honestly. Maya pulled her knees to her chest. Everything sounds different now. It will for a while. We sat without speaking. Pepper climbed onto the sofa between us and placed his head on her leg. Before returning to bed, Maya asked one more question. Why did you wait 5 days? I could have defended myself. I could have described the calls, the welfare check, the messages, the facility. Instead, I gave her the answer that mattered, because the person lying to me understood which lies I wanted to respect. On Sunday morning, Anita arrived at my house with a laptop, 2 banker's boxes, and coffee for everyone. She had not slept either. Claire had authorized her to share company records with me in my role as director. Anita placed a copy of the Riverside purchase agreement on my dining table. The buyer was Hawthorne Development Group, a regional company that had built apartment and retail projects in Texas and Oklahoma. Its offer of $9.4 million required Pierce Mobility to vacate within 12 months. The agreement also included a $780,000 transaction fee payable to Nolan Strategic Advisory upon closing. Grant's company would receive a fee from the buyer? I asked. Technically from an affiliate created for the project, Anita said. It was disclosed in a side letter, not in the board materials. Who drafted the side letter? Hawthorne's counsel. Their position is that Grant represented the arrangement had been approved by all conflicted parties. It had not. I know. Anita showed me the purported approval. My name appeared beneath a paragraph waiving the founder consent provision. The signature looked like mine because it was mine, copied from the 90-day proxy I had signed before knee surgery 2 years earlier. The page included a notary stamp. Carla Ruiz, I read, a former colleague of Vanessa's. Have you spoken to her? Not yet. Detective Ortiz asked us not to contact potential witnesses until warrants are served. The board was scheduled to meet at 9 Monday morning. Grant's proposed agenda had 3 items. Recognize Claire's medical incapacity, confirm his temporary authority, and approve the Riverside sale. He needed 75% of voting shares for the land sale, I said. Even with Claire absent, he doesn't have it. The continuity plan allows an incapacitated holder's shares to be voted by the designated executive trustee. Who is that? Under the current document, Claire designated Grant. I stared at Anita. When? She turned another page toward me. The designation was dated 8 months earlier and carried Claire's electronic signature. Anita had never seen it. The corporate secretary had received it from Vanessa on Tuesday, 1 day after Claire was placed in the shelter. If the board accepted the physician's letter and this designation, Anita explained, Grant would vote Claire's 42%. Added to his 11% and the support he believed he had from 2 employee trust representatives, he claimed 80%. And my founder consent? Waived by the forged document. The plan was not brilliant. It depended on rushed people accepting papers they should have verified. Most successful fraud does. Cancel the meeting, I said. I cannot unilaterally cancel a board meeting. Then James Hollis can. James was the independent board chair. a retired banker who considered procedure a form of personal hygiene. Anita had already called him. He agreed to replace the original agenda with an emergency session addressing management authority and preservation of records. "We need you there," she said. "Claire is chief executive. Claire is in the hospital. Then we appoint an interim executive who is not me." Anita studied me. "No one asked you to take the company back. People rarely ask founders directly. They just clear a chair. I had spent 4 years learning to stay out of that chair." Claire's crisis did not erase the reason I left it. We called James. By noon, he had spoken to all directors except Grant. He proposed appointing Maria Chen, our chief financial officer, as interim chief executive for 30 days. Maria had worked at Pierce Mobility for 16 years, had no family relationship to us, and had once corrected me in front of a lender because my cash flow estimate was too optimistic. I trusted her judgment more because she had survived my displeasure. The board would freeze all non-routine transfers, suspend Grant and Vanessa, preserve email and access logs, and notify Hawthorne that no sale authority existed. "What about the $386,000? I asked Anita. "The bank froze what remains in Nolan Strategic's account. $209,000 is still there. $84,000 went to a title company escrow. The rest paid personal credit cards, a vehicle loan, and transfers we are tracing." "Company money paid their personal debt?" "It appears so." Eli had entered the dining room without us noticing. He stood near the doorway in dinosaur pajamas. "Whose debt?" he asked. Anita closed the folder. "Adult business," I said. "Dad's?" "Eli, we will talk with your mother when she comes home." Everyone says that when the answer is yes. He walked away before I could respond. The sentence stayed with me through the rest of the day. Protecting children does not mean making them ignorant of the earthquake while furniture falls around them. It means refusing to hand them the job of measuring the fault. Claire came home from the hospital Tuesday afternoon. The doctors had wanted to keep her another night, but she said hospitals had too many doors other people controlled. She could not return to her house because it remained a crime scene and because the thought of the bedroom made her unable to breathe. We arranged the downstairs study at my house as a bedroom. The hospital supplied a walker. Pepper lay beside her before the nurse finished explaining medication. Maya hovered in the doorway. "Can I help?" Claire handed her a pillow. It was an ordinary request. That was why it mattered. Grant was returned to Tulsa the same day. Prosecutors charged him initially with kidnapping, domestic assault, unauthorized use of a computer, and embezzlement. The charges could change as evidence developed. Vanessa was arrested on complaints related to document fraud and conspiracy, then released pending formal review because police had not yet established what she knew about Claire's confinement. Diane called me 17 times. I answered once. Grant's lawyer says Claire entered the shelter during a panic episode and he secured the hatch because she was dangerous, she said. The inside handle was removed. He says she removed it months ago because it was loose. New brackets were screwed into the floor from outside Tuesday morning. Maybe he was afraid she would hurt the children. The children were already with you. Walter, I am trying to understand. Then begin with the facts that make your son uncomfortable, not the story that makes you comfortable. She inhaled sharply. May I see the children? Claire will decide with the advocate. You are turning them against us. I nearly ended the call. Instead, I said, Diane, your grandchildren love their father. That love is hurting them. If you ask them to use it as evidence that he did nothing wrong, you will make the hurt worse. She did not answer. If you want contact, I continued, stop discussing the case with them. Stop forwarding statements from Grant's attorney, and stop asking Maya what Claire remembers. I asked one question. One question from a grandmother can feel like an examination. She began to cry again. This time I did not comfort her. Compassion does not require volunteering for every role in another person's grief. At Grant's first court appearance, his lawyer requested release on bond. Claire did not attend. I did, along with Anita and Detective Ortiz. Grant entered wearing county clothing and looked smaller than he had behind a conference table. He saw me in the second row. For 1 second, his face showed relief. Then he seemed to remember which side I was on. His lawyer, Martin Keene, described him as a respected executive, father of 2, and lifelong Oklahoma resident. He argued that the incident arose from a marital and medical crisis, not financial motive. He said Claire had suffered paranoia about ordinary business decisions and entered the shelter voluntarily. Grant, fearing for her safety and the children's, secured the door while arranging treatment. The prosecutor placed photographs of the hatch on a screen. For 5 days? The judge asked. Keene said Grant had provided water and checked on her. The prosecutor replied that Grant then traveled to Dallas, leaving Claire locked beneath the floor with no working phone and less than 1 quart of water. Keene said another person was supposed to release her. That was new. Who? The judge asked. My client is exercising his right not to answer investigative questions at this stage. The judge denied immediate release and scheduled a fuller detention hearing after prosecutors completed a risk assessment. As deputies led Grant away, he turned toward me. Walter, ask Claire what she did with the original file. His lawyer pulled him forward. I wrote the sentence down. At home, Claire was sitting at the kitchen table with Maria Chen on a video call. She ended the call when she saw my face. What happened? I repeated Grant's words. Claire went pale. The blue folder. What blue folder? The documents I printed Monday. I hid them before he took me upstairs. Where? She looked toward the children's rooms before lowering her voice. Inside Mom's cedar chest. Evelyn had given Claire a small cedar chest when Maya was born. It stood at the foot of the bed, directly above the shelter. The police had photographed it but had not opened it because it was outside the initial search scope. Detective Ortiz obtained an amended warrant that evening. Inside, beneath baby blankets and Evelyn's embroidered tablecloths, officers found the original Riverside land file. It contained more than a purchase agreement. There was an internal valuation showing the property could be worth $12 to $13 million after rezoning. There was a draft employment contract promising Grant a 5-year position with Hawthorne at $420,000 annually. There was a spreadsheet labeling the 61 Riverside employees as transition liabilities, and there was a document titled Family Communication Strategy. The first line read, Claire's recent pattern of exhaustion and emotional instability requires a unified, compassionate response. Below it were prepared phrases for Grant, Vanessa, Diane, and the children. Claire needs rest. Direct contact may worsen her condition. She has voluntarily surrendered her phone. Please respect the family's privacy until Monday. The last page listed me. Likely reaction: intrusive concern framed as protection. Recommended response: remind him that Claire requested boundaries after Evelyn's death. If necessary, reference prior accusations of over-involvement. I read that paragraph twice. Grant had not merely anticipated my love for Claire. He had studied the places where love had embarrassed me and turned them into instructions. At the bottom of the page was a handwritten note. W will wait if message comes from C. 5 days max. He had been correct. I waited 5 days. Guilt can disguise itself as responsibility. The morning after police found the communication plan, I created a list of every moment when I might have prevented what happened. I should not have hired Vanessa. I should not have allowed Grant's consulting company. I should have reviewed the land file when Claire first raised the question. I should have entered the house Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. By breakfast, the list had become a private trial in which I served as witness, prosecutor, and judge. Claire found me at the kitchen table. She was learning to move with the walker. Each step required a small negotiation between pain and balance. I started to stand and help her into a chair. Sit down, she said. I was pulling the chair out. I know how chairs work. She eased herself into it, then looked at my legal pad. What is that? Things I missed. May I see it? I turned it over. Then it is not a business document. It is punishment. I recommended Grant for Chief Operating Officer. I promoted him. I hired Vanessa. I approved the hire. I told you policies would protect the company from family conflicts. The policies did not lock me in a shelter. Her voice was level, but her hand shook as she reached for the coffee. Dad, if you make yourself responsible for everything Grant did, you will still be making this about your power. The sentence hurt because it was true. I had always believed responsibility was the opposite of control. Sometimes it is simply control, looking backward, insisting the past could have obeyed if only I had been wiser. What do you need from me? I asked. Today? Today. Drive me to the office. Sit beside me at the board meeting. Do not speak for me unless I ask. The doctor said you should rest. The doctor said I should avoid prolonged exertion. The meeting will be remote, and Maria arranged a private room on the first floor. I started to object again. Claire raised one eyebrow. You asked what I need. At 8:30, I drove her to Pierce Mobility. Employees had been told only that Claire was safe, Grant and Vanessa were suspended, and law enforcement was investigating unauthorized corporate activity. Even with careful language, rumors moved faster than the elevator. People stood when Claire entered the lobby. She wore a navy suit over the medical boot, and used a cane because she did not want photographs of the walker. Maria met us near reception and hugged her without asking questions. "The boardroom is secure," Maria said. "No press, no staff, no recording except the official minutes." Claire looked toward the workshop corridor. "How many people know about the shelter?" "Everyone has heard something. No one has heard it from management." "Then we tell them after the meeting. Facts, not details." The board convened at 9. James Hollis attended by video, along with Anita, Maria, 2 independent directors, and the 3 trustees representing our employee ownership plan. Grant's chair was empty. His attorney had sent a letter objecting to any action taken while he was unable to participate. James read the emergency agenda. "Before we begin," Claire said, "I need the minutes to reflect that I am present, competent, and exercising my own voting authority." Anita entered the statement. Grant's proposed incapacity resolution appeared on the screen. The physician letter attached to it was not an evaluation. It was a note from a telehealth clinic confirming that a patient identified as C. Nolan had reported insomnia and stress. Someone had added a second page describing cognitive impairment. The second page used a different file format and contained no physician signature. "The clinic denies creating it," Anita said. James asked Claire whether she had attended the telehealth appointment. "No." "Did you authorize Grant to obtain medical information on your behalf?" "No." The board voted unanimously to reject the incapacity resolution and remove the false document from all decision files while preserving it for investigators. Next came the Riverside transaction. Anita displayed the voting structure. Claire held 42%. I held 32%. Grant held 11%. The employee trust held 15% through its trustees. A land sale required 75% approval, and my separate written consent as founder. The forged waiver was shown beside the real proxy from which my signature had been copied. One of the employee trustees, Harold Green, took off his glasses. "Grant told us Walter wanted the sale but did not want his name attached because employees would blame him," he said. "Did you receive that in writing?" Anita asked. "No, he said it at dinner." Another trustee admitted that Grant had promised a special distribution of $22,000 to each Riverside employee after closing. The promise appeared generous until Maria explained that most of those employees would lose their positions during relocation. "A severance payment is not ownership," Claire said. The board voted to withdraw all sale authority, notify Hawthorne that the agreement was unauthorized, and demand return of the $84,000 escrow payment. James looked at me through the camera. "Walter, for clarity, do you consent to any current sale of Riverside?" "No." "Do you anticipate reconsidering in the next 30 days? I looked at Claire. She did not signal an answer. "My consent right is a safeguard, not a substitute for management review," I said. "I will not consent while the chief executive and board are conducting an independent property analysis. I will consider whatever lawful recommendation they make after that." It would have been easy to announce that the land would never be sold. Employees would have applauded. Claire might even have felt relieved. But a promise made during crisis can become another lock on someone else's future. The board appointed Maria interim chief executive for 30 days. Claire retained her title but delegated daily authority while she recovered. Grant and Vanessa were suspended without access to systems. A forensic accounting firm was retained, and all family-related vendor contracts were frozen. When the meeting ended, Claire exhaled slowly. "You did not make a speech," she said. "I had one prepared." "I know. It was very good. I am sure it was." We laughed for the first time since Saturday. At noon, Claire and Maria addressed the staff from the training room. Employees watched in person or by video. Claire stood behind a lectern to keep weight off her ankle. "Many of you have heard that I was missing," she said. "I was unlawfully prevented from communicating with my family and the company. I am safe. Criminal charges are being handled by law enforcement, and I will not discuss evidence or ask anyone to choose sides." She explained the leadership arrangement, the frozen sale, and the independent audit. "No employee will lose a job because of an agreement that lacked proper approval," she said. "No employee will be asked to provide rumors, private messages, or family opinions. If investigators contact you, tell the truth. If the company asks for records, preserve them. Everything else can wait." A technician named Russell raised his hand. "Did Mr. Nolan take company money?" Claire gripped the lectern. "The audit will determine the amount and purpose of every transfer. I will not declare a conclusion before the work is complete. But he is your husband. That is why procedure matters more, not less." Afterward, employees lined up to speak with her. Most offered sympathy. A few offered information. Grant had asked the information technology manager to extend email retention for executives but shorten it for land project contractors. He had instructed an assistant to send Riverside employee addresses to Hawthorne. He had held 3 evening meetings with Vanessa after Claire left the office. A maintenance supervisor had seen Grant measuring storage space at the warehouse for an outside moving company. None proved what happened in the bedroom. Together they showed a transaction advancing in secret. At home, the crisis followed us through television alerts and unanswered calls. A local reporter had obtained Grant's arrest record. The headline read, "Tulsa executive accused of holding wife in underground room during $9.4 million deal." Maya saw it on her phone before we could warn her. "People at school are sending this to me," she said. Claire asked the principal to excuse both children for the week. Rebecca arranged counseling. We agreed on one answer they could give friends. "My family is dealing with a private legal matter, and I am not discussing it." Eli preferred a shorter version. "None of your business." "True," I told him, "but not always useful." The forensic audit produced its first report after 10 days. The $386,000 transfer was the largest irregular payment, not the only one. Nolan Strategic had received $97,000 over 18 months through invoices split below the amount requiring board review. Several invoices described vendor risk studies that no employee had seen. Grant had also charged personal travel, club dues, and a lease on a luxury SUV to a business development account. Those expenses totaled $64,000. Claire read the report twice. "I signed some of these monthly summaries," she said. "The payments were grouped under approved departments," Maria explained. "The vendor names were abbreviated. You should have seen them, but the concealment was deliberate." I still signed. Maria did not rescue her from the fact. Yes. I admired her for that answer. Claire asked the board to include her oversight failures in its final governance review. She also requested that her annual bonus be withheld until the company calculated its losses. "That is not necessary," I said after Maria left. "You do not get to decide that. Grant deceived you, and I was chief executive. Accountability is not the same as equal blame." I knew the distinction. I still disliked watching it cost her. The police search reconstructed Monday night from devices and records. At 8:03 p.m., Grant used Claire's phone to cancel a call to Anita. At 8:17, the home thermostat registered motion upstairs while Claire's fitness watch showed a sudden fall in heart rate consistent with sedation. At 8:42, Grant's Suve left the house. He purchased hardware at a 24-hour store just after 6 Tuesday morning, returned at 7:05, and disabled the doorbell camera. Vanessa's car arrived Tuesday at 7:48 and remained for 33 minutes. During her first interview, Vanessa said she waited in the kitchen while Grant checked on Claire. She claimed she believed Claire had been admitted to Red Cedar the previous night. The home alarm log contradicted her. Her employee code opened the bedroom door sensor at 8:02. There should not have been a separate sensor on a bedroom door. Grant had installed one 3 months earlier and linked it to a private account. When Ortiz confronted Vanessa, she changed her statement. Grant had told her Claire experienced a violent panic episode and had gone into the shelter voluntarily. He said the inside mechanism jammed and asked Vanessa to help move the bed so he could repair it. She saw the hatch, but did not see Claire. "Did you hear her?" Ortiz asked. Vanessa said no. The communication plan was created on Vanessa's work laptop. She said Grant dictated it as part of a family response to Claire's mental health crisis. The false leave request was uploaded under Vanessa's credentials. She said Grant handed it to her on a flash drive. The notary, Carla Ruiz, told police Vanessa asked her to stamp my waiver during lunch 2 months earlier. Carla never saw me sign. Vanessa said I was traveling and needed the filing completed. Carla accepted $200 in cash and a promise of future human resources work. By the second week, Vanessa's lawyer approached prosecutors about cooperation. Claire did not celebrate. "She helped him," she said. "Yes." She ate dinner with us Sunday. She asked Maya about summer camp. The next night she helped him. "Yes." "Stop agreeing with me." "What would you like me to say?" "I don't know." She put both hands over her face. "Everyone keeps giving me information as if the next fact will make this logical." I sat beside her. "It may never feel logical." "He brought water down there." That detail troubled her most. Grant had not forgotten she needed water. He had calculated how much suffering the plan required and supplied enough life to continue it. The shelter held 2 4-gallon emergency containers. One had split along a bottom seam when Claire fell against it. The remaining water leaked into a floor drain during the first night. Grant opened the hatch Tuesday morning and saw the wet floor. He left a 1-gallon jug. According to Vanessa's eventual statement, He planned to keep Claire confined until Sunday evening. He believed the gallon would be enough if she rationed it. He intended to obtain her signing password, complete the board documents, then move her to a private rental house. On Monday, after the sale was approved, she would appear disoriented and be taken for psychiatric evaluation. "Did he say what happened if I refused the password?" Claire asked Detective Ortiz. "Vanessa says Grant claimed he could reset the credential through a backup administrator. That was not my question." Ortiz met her eyes. "Vanessa says he told her you would cooperate before the water ran out." Claire did not speak for the rest of the interview. That night, I found her sitting on the floor outside the downstairs study. She had tried to walk to the bathroom without the cane and frozen when the hallway light went out automatically. I turned it on and sat against the opposite wall. "Do not touch me yet," she said. "All right." Her breathing came quickly. The therapist had taught her to name 5 things she could see, 4 she could feel, 3 she could hear, 2 she could smell, and 1 she could taste. I did not prompt her. She began when she was ready. Blue rug, brass lamp, Pepper's red collar, the picture of Mom, your ridiculous socks. I looked down. Evelyn had bought the socks. Tiny yellow hammers crossed a navy background. "They are excellent socks." Claire almost laughed, then cried instead. When she reached one thing she could taste, she said, "Metal, the sedative, the blood from her lip, or memory." I did not ask which. After her breathing slowed, she held out her hand. I helped her stand. Healing did not arrive in a straight line. Some mornings, Claire could direct an audit meeting for 2 hours. Some afternoons, the sound of a drill from a neighboring yard sent her into the bathroom. She slept with the door open and a lamp on. She checked every glass of water before drinking it. She apologized for these habits until her therapist told her survival responses were not bad manners. I developed my own habits. I listened outside her door. I counted her trips to the kitchen. I examined the lock each night. One morning she caught me watching as she poured tea. "Dad." "What?" "You are monitoring me." "I am making breakfast." "You are holding an empty plate." I looked at it. "I can be afraid without making you responsible for calming me," she said. "That sounds like therapy." "It is. You should try it." I did. My therapist was a man named Samir Patel, who was younger than Claire and wore shoes with no visible laces. During our first appointment, I gave him a complete chronology of the 5 days. He listened, then asked, "What would you like to be different?" "I would like to have entered the house Tuesday." "That is not available." I disliked him immediately. I returned the next week. Grant was released after 23 days, under conditions stricter than his attorney had requested. He surrendered his passport, wore a GPS monitor, lived with Diane, and was forbidden to contact Claire, the children, company employees, or potential witnesses. He could communicate with the children only through court-approved supervised sessions. The day he left jail, a courier delivered a letter to my house. It was addressed to me in Grant's handwriting. "Walter, you know Claire's history of anxiety after Evelyn died. I handled a crisis badly, but this narrative that I plan to harm her is destroying our children and the company. You can stop it. Ask her why she hid documents instead of speaking to her husband. Ask why she has always needed you to validate every decision. I was protecting what all of us built from a temporary episode she will regret making public. Please remember, I am Maya and Eli's father." There was no apology. Claire's confinement appeared only as a crisis he had handled badly. The theft became something all of us had built. His fatherhood was offered not as a duty but as leverage. I gave the letter to Detective Ortiz and did not reply. The next supervised visit with the children lasted 11 minutes. Grant began by telling Maya he loved her. Then he said, "Adults sometimes misunderstand actions taken under pressure." The supervisor reminded him he could not discuss the case. He asked Eli whether Grandpa had said bad things about him. The supervisor ended the session. Eli cried in the parking lot. "I didn't even get to tell him about my science project." Claire knelt as far as her boot allowed. "That is not your fault. He wasted the whole visit." Yes. It was the same answer Maria had given Claire about signing the summaries. Honest, limited, and free of excuses. Hawthorne Development sent 3 lawyers and its senior vice president to meet with our board in July. The senior vice president, Elaine Brooks, did not begin by claiming her company was also a victim. That helped. "We failed to verify conflicted party approval," she said. Mr. Nolan represented that his advisory fee had been reviewed by Pierce Mobility's general counsel. We accepted a letter he provided instead of contacting Miss Cole. The letter carried Anita's name but not her signature. It had been created from an old legal memo and altered to describe the transaction fee as reasonable. Hawthorne agreed to return the $84,000 in escrow, withdraw the purchase agreement, pay the company's documented due diligence costs, and provide all communications with Grant. In exchange, Pierce Mobility reserved rather than waived any future claim until the criminal case concluded. "Are you still interested in the property?" James asked. Elaine looked at Claire. "Not under the current circumstances. In the future, if your board runs an open process, we would evaluate it like any other opportunity." Claire nodded. "That is the only answer I would accept." After the meeting, I asked whether the idea of selling Riverside was dead. "No," she said. I was surprised. "Grant tried to empty the warehouse. Grant's crime does not make the land permanently unsuitable for sale. The valuation shows we could finance a modern facility farther east and still retain capital. 61 employees work there, which is why any proposal must include transportation, job protection, and a completed replacement before we move. Do you want to sell? I want the board to study it without a hidden $780,000 payment." She smiled faintly. "You taught me not to let anger choose an asset strategy. I have taught many excellent lessons I personally dislike following." The audit expanded. By August, it had identified $547,000 in improper payments and personal charges connected to Grant. Of that amount, $361,000 was recovered from frozen accounts and escrow. The company's crime policy covered another $90,000 after a deductible. Grant's SUV and a lake boat were restrained as potential restitution assets. Claire insisted the company pursue every recoverable dollar. She also accepted the board's decision to reduce her prior year incentive compensation by 20% for control failures. I objected privately to James. "She nearly died." "Yes," he said. "Grant concealed the payments." "Yes." "Then why penalize her?" "Because the board concluded she missed repeated related party controls before the attack. We considered the circumstances and reduced the adjustment substantially. It feels cruel." "Walter, if Claire wants to remain chief executive, we cannot treat her only as Grant's victim." I knew he was right. I asked whether he could be right less bluntly. "No," he said. Pierce Mobility adopted new governance rules. No two close relatives could occupy positions where one controlled the other's pay, records, or leave status. Related party payments required independent director approval regardless of amount. Medical incapacity could not be recognized from a document supplied by a spouse without direct verification by counsel and a second officer. Emergency voting proxies expired automatically and could not be filed retroactively. Employees called the last rule the Claire rule until she asked them not to. "Name it after the failure, not the person harmed by it," she said. In the final policy manual, it became the independent verification rule. Vanessa resigned as part of a cooperation agreement. She pleaded guilty to filing a false corporate instrument and conspiring to misapply company funds. Sentencing was delayed while she testified and assisted in recovering records. She surrendered her professional human resources certification and agreed never to work for Pierce Mobility again. Before entering the plea, she requested permission through lawyers to write Claire an apology. Claire said no. "I do not need a letter she can later describe as closure," she told me. "You may want it someday. Then someday I can ask." Carla Ruiz, the notary, admitted stamping my signature without witnessing it. Her commission was revoked. She entered a deferred plea, paid restitution for investigative costs, and testified that Vanessa had assured her the act was an administrative shortcut authorized by me. "Do you forgive her?" Maya asked after reading an article about the plea. "Carla?" "Any of them. We were eating dinner at my house. Claire had moved from the walker to a cane, and the medical boot had been replaced by an ankle brace. Ely was trying to keep Pepper from stealing chicken." "Forgiveness is not a group rate," I said. "What does that mean?" "It means I do not have one decision that covers everyone. I can believe Carla should not go to prison and still believe she should never notarize another document. I can be glad Vanessa told the truth and still not invite her back into our lives." "What about Dad?" Claire set down her fork. "You are allowed to love your father," she said. "You are allowed to be angry. You do not have to forgive him on my schedule, his schedule, or Grandpa's." "Have you forgiven him?" "No." The direct answer startled Maya. "Does that mean you never will?" "It means no today." Eli pushed a piece of chicken to the edge of his plate where Pepper could reach it. "Can I forgive him and still not want to visit?" he asked. "Yes," Claire said. "Can I visit and still be mad?" "Yes." "That is confusing." "It is." We resumed eating. No one transformed the conversation into a lesson with a satisfying ending. Diane's first visit with the children took place at a family services center. She had agreed in writing not to discuss Grant's case, criticize Claire, or ask the children to carry messages. For 40 minutes, she followed every rule. She brought Maya a book and Eli a model airplane. Then, while they packed their things, she said, "Your father prays for you every night." The supervisor documented it as an indirect message. Diane called Claire afterward. "I only wanted them to know he loves them." "They know. You make every word sound dangerous. Because Grant used ordinary words to manage us. I am not Grant. Then you can learn when to stop." Diane missed the next visit by her own choice. She returned 2 weeks later and completed an hour without mentioning her son. Progress was not dramatic. It looked like a grandmother discussing model glue and school schedules while swallowing sentences she wanted to say. Claire filed for divorce in late July. The petition requested sole temporary custody, supervised contact for Grant, preservation of marital assets, and an accounting of every company-related payment. She did not seek to terminate his parental rights. Her lawyer explained that criminal conduct against a spouse did not automatically erase legal parenthood, and Claire said she did not want the children's future decided as a gesture of anger. Grant responded by alleging that Claire and I had used the criminal case to remove him from a business he helped grow. He requested valuation of his 11% interest and claimed an additional marital share in Claire's stock. "He is still trying to turn family into ownership," I said. Claire's divorce attorney, Rochelle Barnes, closed the response file. "The court will classify the assets. We do not need to argue with his philosophy." The shares Grant owned were real. His claim to Claire's inherited and gifted shares was weak under the company agreements and state law, but not something we could wish away. Rochelle proposed placing Grant's voting rights in a court-supervised trust while valuation and restitution were resolved. The company considered buying his stake. "Offer him book value minus every dollar he took," I told Anita. "That could be challenged as coercive while charges are pending. Then fair market value minus every dollar established through judgment. That is more defensible." Claire listened from the other end of the table. "And any amount remaining after restitution goes into a trust benefiting Maya and Eli," she said. "Grant will object," Anita replied. "Then he can receive the balance directly if the court requires it. I will not pretend his shares have no value because I hate what he did." The preliminary criminal hearing began in September. I testified first about the calls, the messages, the welfare check, and the sounds beneath the bed. The courtroom was smaller than the boardroom and less comfortable. Grant sat beside Martin Keene in a dark suit. The GPS monitor was hidden beneath his trouser leg. The prosecutor asked what I saw when firefighters opened the hatch. I described Claire at the bottom of the stairs. What did she say? She said Grant took her phone. Then she said he locked her in. Keene objected to the second statement. The judge allowed it for the limited purpose of explaining the immediate response, not as proof by itself. On cross-examination, Keene asked how often I entered Claire's home without permission. "Once," I said. "That Saturday. You possessed a key." "Yes. You drove past the house Friday night and watched it from across the street. For about 10 minutes. You went to your daughter's workplace after receiving a message asking for space." "Yes." He let the answers accumulate. "Mr. Pierce, is it fair to say you had difficulty accepting your adult daughter's boundaries?" "Sometimes." Claire looked at me from the front row. Keene appeared surprised. "So when Grant told officers she had voluntarily entered treatment, you assumed he was lying because you disliked being excluded?" "No. I began to believe he was lying because the details did not match her behavior. The facility could not relay a message. Her dog had been abandoned without instructions. Her lawyer had not seen the leave documents, and the board meeting was scheduled for the day Grant said she would return. But you had no direct evidence she was in danger until you entered the house. That is why I requested a welfare check before I entered. Officers found no danger. They did not enter the bedroom." Keene stepped closer. "Did you use this crisis to resume control of Pierce Mobility?" "No. You attended an emergency board meeting. As a director. You blocked a $9.4 million transaction your son-in-law supported. The board withdrew it unanimously. I withheld a consent that had been forged. And your daughter remains chief executive." "Yes. While living in your house. She needed a ground floor room while her ankle healed." Keene looked at the judge as if the pattern should now be obvious. I understood the pattern he wanted. An intrusive father, a dependent daughter, and a husband cornered by their alliance. The useful parts were taken from real imperfections. That did not make the conclusion true. "Mr. Pierce," he said, "isn't it true you never trusted Grant to lead the company?" "I trusted him enough to recommend him for chief operating officer, and later regretted it. Very much." The prosecutor did not redirect. Claire testified the next day. She described the tea, the dizziness, the shelter, Grant's demands, and the water. Keene questioned her history of anxiety after Evelyn's death. Claire acknowledged seeing a therapist for grief and taking prescribed medication for 6 months. Had you ever experienced a panic attack? He asked. Yes. Had you ever gone into the storm shelter during one? No. Did you tell my client you felt unsafe? I told him the company was unsafe if he could move money with a copied approval. Did you raise your voice? Yes. Throw a mug? I knocked it off the desk when I lost balance after he drugged me. Keene asked whether she remembered every minute of the evening. No. Then you cannot say you did not enter the shelter voluntarily during a period you do not remember. Claire looked at Grant. I can say I did not voluntarily remain behind, brackets screwed into the floor from the outside, Vanessa testified under her cooperation agreement. She admitted helping Grant move the bed Tuesday morning. She admitted hearing a dull impact beneath the hatch and accepting his explanation that a loose pipe was striking concrete. She admitted creating the communication plan and filing the false leave request. When did you first know Claire was physically inside the shelter? The prosecutor asked. Vanessa began to cry. Wednesday night. Grant had called her from the house. Claire was refusing the password. Vanessa heard Claire shouting through the phone. What did she say? She said, Vanessa, call Dad. My daughter had been beneath the floor saying my name while I sat at home trying to respect a text message. What did you do? Grant told me Claire was having an episode and that opening the shelter would ruin everything before Monday. He said there was water. I told him he had to let her out. Did you call police? No. Did you call Walter Pierce? No. Did you correct the medical leave filing? No. What did you do? I went home. There are betrayals committed through elaborate plans. There are others contained in 3 words. I went home. The forensic examiner then presented deleted messages recovered from Grant's phone. On Wednesday at 10:16 p.m., Vanessa had written, she called for Walter. This has gone too far. Grant replied, accepted her text. He will wait. Board Monday, then we reset everything. Vanessa wrote, what if she gets hurt? Grant answered, she has water. Stop making this emotional. The judge ordered Grant to stand trial on all major counts and revoked his release after finding that his contact with a former Hawthorne consultant violated witness restrictions. He returned to custody that afternoon. Maya did not attend the hearing, but she read a summary online. Grandma Diane said Aunt Vanessa was weak and Grant pressured her, she said. Both can be true, Claire replied. Pressure explains choices. It does not make them disappear. Would you have called Grandpa if you were Vanessa? I hope so. You don't know? People often imagine courage as a fact about themselves. It is usually a decision that becomes real only when the moment arrives. Maya looked toward me. Grandpa came. Eventually, I said. Claire reached across the table. Yes, she said. He came. The house on South Victor Avenue remained closed for another month. When police released it, Claire asked me to accompany her inside. Detective Ortiz had warned us that returning to a place after trauma could be unpredictable. Claire's therapist suggested beginning with the porch, then deciding whether to continue. We arrived on a cool October morning. The package that had sat outside in June was gone, collected as evidence and later returned. It contained filters for the refrigerator. I thought about the ordinary future Claire expected when she ordered them. She stood on the porch with her cane and held the spare key. Do you want me to open it? I asked. No. Her hand shook as she put the key in the lock. Pepper waited with me at the bottom step. Maya and Eli had chosen to stay with Diane during the visit after their counselors agreed it was appropriate. Diane was permitted unsupervised daytime contact by then, provided she did not facilitate communication with Grant. Claire opened the door. The house no longer smelled of bleach. It smelled unoccupied. Dust, dry wood, and air that had circulated without people. We walked through the kitchen first. The mug Claire knocked over had been removed from evidence and sat in a labeled paper bag on the counter. She did not touch it. Upstairs, yellow evidence tape crossed the bedroom doorway. Claire stopped. I thought I would know what I wanted to do with this room, she said. You do not have to decide today. Everyone keeps telling me that. It is very convenient advice. She smiled without looking away from the door. The platform bed had been moved against the wall. The rug was rolled up. The hatch stood exposed, its damaged brackets removed but their screw holes visible in the floor. Police had replaced the interior release handle for safety. Claire entered. I stayed in the hall until she held out her hand. We approached the opening together. The hatch was closed but not locked. She placed her palm on the metal. I could hear cars, she said. Not clearly. A low sound when they passed. I kept thinking one of them might be you. I drove past Friday. I know. Mrs. Kaplan saw me. No. I mean I heard your car. I looked at her. The muffler makes that little rattle when you slow down. I heard it and hit the hatch until my arm stopped working. Friday night. I had been across the street while she struck the steel beneath her bed. I turned away. Dad, I should have entered. You requested a welfare check. You spoke to the neighbor. You came back. The key was in my pocket, and a message from my phone told you not to use it. A false message, which you did not know. I stared at the empty screw holes. How do you live with hearing my car and knowing I left? Claire took a long breath. Some days badly. The answer was painful. It was also a gift because it did not require her to protect me. Other days, she continued, I remember you returned. Both facts belong to me. You do not get to remove the first by hating yourself, and Grant does not get to remove the second because his plan worked for a while. She opened the hatch. Daylight from the bedroom reached only the first 3 steps. A police light remained clipped to the wall below. The shelf bracket she used to scratch had been taken as evidence. Do you want to go down? I asked. No. She closed it. I want to sell the house. My first instinct was to agree before fear could change her mind. My second was to advise waiting until the market improved. Both were attempts to make her decision easier for me. All right, I said. That is all? Do you want an argument? I expected a market analysis. I have one in the car. This time she laughed. We hired a contractor to restore the bedroom floor and bring the shelter to current safety standards before listing the house. Claire refused to conceal it. The disclosure described the room, its new interior release, independent alarm, ventilation, and exterior emergency access. A family buying the house the following spring considered the shelter an advantage. That feels wrong, I admitted when their offer arrived. A room is not guilty, Claire said. She accepted an amount $40,000 below what a similar house had recently sold for. Her agent attributed the difference partly to disclosure and partly to the repair history. Grant's share of any marital equity was placed in escrow pending the divorce. Claire rented a townhouse 3 blocks from the children's school. Every bedroom was above ground. The first night there, Eli asked her to check under his bed. She did. The second night, he checked it himself. By the 6th week, no one mentioned it. I returned to my own house after 94 days of shared living. The quiet felt both welcome and suspicious. I caught myself listening for Claire's cane until I remembered she no longer needed it. Pepper remained with her, so there were no nails clicking across my kitchen floor and no dog hair on the sofa. I missed all of them. I also enjoyed eating toast over the sink without receiving criticism from 3 generations. Claire resumed full executive duties 11 weeks after the rescue. Maria returned to her position as chief financial officer but joined the board as an executive director. The independent directors recommended it because the company needed a financial voice, not filtered through family relationships. At the annual meeting, I announced that I would retire from the board at the end of the year. Claire objected privately. Are you leaving because of me? I am leaving because I am 72 and have now retired 4 separate times. You still own 32%. Ownership does not require attending every meeting. I placed my shares in a voting arrangement that preserved my founder consent right while I was competent, but transferred ordinary voting to an independent fiduciary if I became unable to serve. On my death, 8% would pass to Claire, 12% to the employee trust, and 12% to trusts for Maya and Eli. The children's trusts had an independent corporate trustee. Neither parent could borrow from them or direct investments. I showed Claire the documents before signing. You do not need my permission, she said. No. I need someone intelligent to tell me whether I have confused affection with governance again. She read every page. Why give me only 8%? Because you already control 42. More would create tax and concentration problems. Also, I plan to spend some money before I die. On what? Shoes with visible laces? She looked confused. I did not explain. The Riverside study concluded in December. Moving the entire operation would cost more than Grant's presentation claimed and risk major service interruptions. The board rejected a near-term sale. It approved leasing an unused 2-acre edge of the property to a rehabilitation clinic and using the income to modernize the warehouse. The decision produced less cash than Hawthorne's offer and no dramatic headline. It preserved jobs, created a customer partnership, and left future options open. That was what honest business often looked like. Not a triumph, but a decision whose disadvantages appeared on the same page as its benefits. Grant's criminal case did not go to trial. After the preliminary hearing, prosecutors received the final device report. It recovered a draft schedule from his laptop. Tuesday, hardware, leave filing, trust designation. Wednesday, W response check. Second credential request. Friday, Dallas/Hawthorne. Sunday, relocate C. Monday, board, execute, medical intake. The metadata showed the schedule had been created 3 weeks before Claire found the transfer. Grant had been preparing for the possibility that she would discover it. There were also audio notes he recorded for himself after meetings. In one, he said the board would accept incapacity if the story was consistent and Claire could be kept offline long enough. In another, he described me as predictable once you make him ashamed of interfering. His lawyer began plea discussions in January. The first proposal required Grant to plead guilty to embezzlement and unlawful restraint in exchange for dismissal of kidnapping and computer fraud charges. It recommended 3 years in custody. Claire rejected the request that she supported. The prosecutor decides what can be proved, she told Rochelle. I decide whether to describe 3 years as enough. I will not. A second proposal included kidnapping, identity theft, and embezzlement, with a 12-year sentence capped at 8 years in custody. It required full restitution, surrender of his Pierce Mobility shares under the civil settlement, and a 10-year protective order after release. Vanessa's testimony and the digital evidence would become part of the factual basis. Grant accepted. Before the plea hearing, he asked to speak with Claire privately. She refused. He asked to write the children. The family court allowed letters screened by their therapist. His first letter to Maya began, "I am sorry adult conflicts have caused you pain." The therapist returned it. The second began, "I made choices that hurt your mother and took me away from you. No one else is responsible for those choices." Maya read that one. She did not reply for a month. Then she wrote 3 sentences. "I love you. I am angry. I will decide when I am ready to talk." Grant's next letter said he understood. It was the first boundary he accepted without argument. At sentencing, the courtroom was full. Employees sat behind Claire. Diane sat behind Grant with an empty seat between herself and Vanessa. Maya and Eli remained at school by their own choice. Claire read a victim impact statement. She did not describe every hour in the shelter. She described consequences. "For 5 days, my husband used my phone, my medical history, my father's respect for my independence, my children's trust, and my authority at work as parts of one lock," she said. The physical hatch was only the most visible piece. She explained the nightmares, the ankle injury, the lost home, the children's therapy, the cost to employees, and the difficulty of drinking something she had not prepared herself. "I do not ask the court to punish Grant because I was frightened. I ask the court to recognize that his plan required me to be alive enough to sign and powerless enough not to refuse. He measured my water against a board meeting." Grant looked down. When it was his turn, he stood. "I told myself I was protecting a deal that would secure my family's future," he said. "I treated Claire as an obstacle and then called that treatment care. I lied to my children, my mother, the board, and Walter. I knew Claire was beneath the floor. I knew she wanted help. I chose the plan." He turned toward Claire. "I am sorry." The judge imposed 12 years, with 8 to be served in state custody and 4 suspended under supervision. Grant was ordered to pay restitution jointly with other responsible parties, comply with the protective orders, and have no role in Pierce Mobility. The family court would continue controlling contact with the children. It was a serious sentence. It did not give Claire 5 days back. Courts can assign years to conduct. They cannot reverse time. Outside, reporters asked whether we were satisfied. Claire said, "The sentence is complete. Our recovery is not public business." We walked to the parking garage without answering more questions. Diane followed us. "Claire?" Claire stopped. Diane's face had aged during the case. She held a tissue in both hands but was not crying. "I want to say something without asking you to make me feel better." Claire waited. "On Wednesday, Grant told me you had voluntarily surrendered your phone. I thought it was strange because you would never go 5 days without speaking to the children. I did not call Walter. I did not call the center. I chose my son's explanation because questioning it felt disloyal." She swallowed. "I did not know where you were. But I helped the silence because I did not want to know he might be lying." It was the first complete apology Diane had offered. No pressure, no confusion, no sentence beginning with "if." Claire nodded once. "Thank you for saying it clearly. May I still see the children Saturday?" "Yes." Diane left. "Have you forgiven her?" I asked when we reached the car. Claire gave me a tired look. "Forgiveness is not a group rate." "That is an excellent phrase. I wonder who said it." The divorce was finalized 2 months later. An independent appraisal valued Grant's 11% stake in Pierce Mobility at $1,360,000 after applying minority interest restrictions in the shareholder agreement. The company purchased the shares. From the proceeds, $547,000 reimbursed company losses and uncovered expenses, $228,000 resolved marital reimbursement claims, and legal obligations were paid. Under the negotiated settlement, most of the remaining balance funded irrevocable education trusts for Maya and Eli. Grant retained a smaller account for re-entry after his sentence. Claire did not like the idea that he would receive anything. But dislike is not an accounting method, she said as she signed. The company's insurance recovery and asset payments ultimately made Pierce Mobility whole, except for its deductible, investigative costs, and lost management time. Claire did not claim victory. Employees had spent months wondering whether their jobs would survive a family crime. Some trust could not be entered back into a ledger. Vanessa received a 5-year deferred sentence, 18 months of supervised home confinement, and community service requirements. Some employees believed that was too lenient. Others believed her testimony prevented a trial that would have forced Claire and the children through years of delay. Claire said both opinions could exist without becoming company policy. In April, Maya asked to visit Grant in prison. She made the request during a counseling session, not in the middle of an argument or after a letter. Her therapist believed it came from curiosity rather than pressure. Claire agreed on the condition that a family services counselor attend and that Maya could leave at any time. I did not agree as quickly. "He has been there 6 weeks," I said after the children went upstairs. "What can possibly be different?" "Maya wants to see her father. She wants him to make this understandable. He cannot. That may be something she needs to learn from him. Or he will tell her the plea was forced and you wanted him imprisoned. Then the counselor will end the visit." I walked to the window. Spring rain struck the glass in soft bursts. "You are risking her stability. I am helping her make a supported choice. She is 15, which is old enough to resent us if we treat love for her father like a symptom. I do not treat it that way." Claire waited. I corrected myself. "I try not to. Dad, I know what he can do with a conversation. I also know what it feels like when someone else decides that confinement is protection." The comparison struck harder than she intended. She saw it immediately. "I am not saying you are like Grant. No. You are saying a good motive does not make control harmless." "Yes." I sat down. "Does Eli want to go?" "No. He wants to keep writing letters." "Then we protect that choice too." Claire drove Maya to the correctional center. I offered to accompany them, but Maya asked me to wait at a diner nearby. She did not want her father looking through the glass and seeing the man who found the hatch. That hurt more than it should have. The visit was not about my role in the rescue. I said I understood. For 50 minutes, I drank coffee that tasted as if the pot had been prepared during a previous administration. I imagined every possible manipulation. Grant crying, Grant blaming, Grant asking Maya to find a document, contact an employee, or repeat a message to Claire. Each version ended with me entering the correctional center and stopping it. I stayed in the diner. Claire and Maya arrived just after noon. Maya's face was swollen from crying, but she did not look shattered. "How was it?" I asked. "Complicated." The counselor had begun by reviewing the rules. Grant apologized for missing school events and for putting Maya in the position of doubting her mother. He did not deny the offense. For the first 20 minutes, he answered questions directly. Then he asked whether Claire still blamed him for everything that happened at the company. Maya reminded him the visit was about their relationship, not the business. Grant said the business was why he had made the choices that separated them. He described feeling excluded by Claire and me. The counselor interrupted. Grant insisted context was not blame. Then he asked me to tell Mom he hopes she can remember the good years, Maya said. "What did you do?" I said I wasn't carrying messages. "And?" He looked hurt. "How did that make you feel?" Claire asked. "Guilty." Then, mad that I felt guilty, she wiped her face with a napkin. I told the counselor I wanted to leave. Dad said he understood. "Do you regret going?" I asked. Maya considered it. "No." I kept thinking if he apologized right, I would know what to feel. He did apologize right for a while, and I still didn't know. "Feelings are poorly managed employees," I said. "They ignore job descriptions." That is a weird grandpa sentence. I have many. On the drive home, Maya asked to stop for ice cream. That was all. No revelation repaired her relationship with Grant. No single failure ended it. She decided future contact would remain by letter for a while. Eli mailed Grant photographs of his science project, but no personal message. Grant replied with 2 pages about the model and did not mention the case. Eli kept the letter in his desk. Their different choices were sometimes difficult for them. Maya accused Eli of pretending nothing happened. Eli accused Maya of wanting to punish everyone. Claire did not force them into agreement. "You had the same father and different experiences," she told them. "Neither of you gets to assign the other person's feelings." I wrote that sentence down later. My work with Samir continued. I no longer disliked him every week. We returned often to the moment I sat outside Claire's house Friday night. I wanted a rule that would guarantee I never made the same error again. Enter every house. Distrust every message. Treat every unexplained absence as danger. Samir pointed out that those rules would turn fear into a permanent warrant. Then what was I supposed to learn? I asked. Perhaps not a universal rule. Perhaps a better process. We created one. When a message from someone I loved felt inconsistent, I would verify through a second channel. When safety was uncertain, I would name the specific facts instead of arguing from instinct. When authorities lacked grounds to act, I would ask what evidence or lawful options could change that. And when concern became a need to control someone else's ordinary decision, I would say so honestly. It was less satisfying than a vow to never wait again. It was also more useful. Claire and I practiced the process sooner than expected. She missed 2 evening calls in May while traveling to a supplier meeting in Kansas City. By the second night, I had checked weather alerts, traffic reports, and the hotel website. I sent one message. "Your silence feels unusual after what happened. I am not asking for details. Please confirm you are safe through this phone or ask Maria to call me." Maria called 10 minutes later. Claire's phone had fallen into a sink at the supplier's factory and stopped working. She was safe, irritated, and waiting for a replacement. When she came home, she did not accuse me of interfering. "That was a very therapeutic text," she said. "It required 3 drafts. I can tell. You could call your father before touring industrial plumbing, and you could avoid monitoring hotel websites." We agreed those were both reasonable suggestions. 1 year after the rescue, Pierce Mobility held an open house at Riverside to mark the new rehabilitation clinic partnership. I attended as a guest for the first time. The fabrication floor had been reorganized. A training apartment showed families how to use lifts, widened doorways, and accessible showers. In the clinic wing, therapists worked with patients before they returned home after injury. Near the entrance, a plaque honored Evelyn. Claire had chosen the inscription, "Accessibility is not doing everything for someone. It is making sure they can choose what to do for themselves." I read it twice. "Too subtle?" Claire asked. "Your mother was rarely subtle." "That is why it works." Maya volunteered at the registration table. Eli demonstrated a ramp model to children using toy cars. Diane brought cookies and did not tell anyone. Grant would have been proud. She had learned that not every feeling required delivery. At the end of the afternoon, James raised a glass of lemonade to Claire, Maria, and the employees. No one toasted me. I was pleased by that more than I expected. Claire drove me back to her townhouse. Her ankle had healed, though she still favored it when tired. Therapy had not erased the shelter. She continued to sleep with a light in the hallway and kept sealed water beside her bed. But she could close a bedroom door. She could drink tea made by Maya. She could hear a drill without leaving the room. Inside, Pepper ran ahead of us. We were discussing the clinic lease when a scratching sound came from Maya's bedroom. Claire stopped mid-sentence. So did I. Scrape. Pause. Scrape. For 1 second, the year disappeared. My body remembered the platform bed, the steel hatch, and my daughter's voice traveling through a seam in the floor. Claire reached the bedroom before me. She opened the door. Pepper was under the bed, pawing at a tennis ball trapped behind a storage basket. Maya lay on the rug, laughing as she tried to reach him. "What?" she asked when she saw our faces. Claire leaned against the doorframe and began to laugh too. Not because the memory was funny, because this sound had an ordinary answer, and we had found it immediately. I lowered myself carefully to one knee and retrieved the ball. "You know," I told Pepper, "some of us are too old for dramatic scratching." He took the ball and ran away. Claire helped me stand. "Your knee? Still 73. You were 72 when this started. That is how years work." We returned to the kitchen. Maya followed, still holding the storage basket. Eli came downstairs asking whether dinner was ready. The hallway light turned on automatically as the afternoon faded. I no longer measured those 5 days, only by the hours I waited. I measured them by what happened afterward. The moment a hatch opened, the truth told under oath, the policies rewritten, the home Claire chose, the boundaries the children learned, and the decisions no one could make in another person's name. For years, I had believed love meant knowing when to step back. I still believe that. But stepping back is not the same as looking away. Privacy is not proof of safety. A message is not a voice simply because it arrives from a familiar phone. And when something beneath the ordinary surface of a life sounds wrong, respect does not forbid us from asking again. Sometimes love waits. Sometimes it knocks. And sometimes, when the silence lasts too long, love uses the key it was trusted to carry.